It was a great opportunity to be involved, speaking to so many people who work in the health sector. My main message, or our main message at the Australian Women Donors Network, is actually about the need to see the world through a gender lens, and particularly when it comes to philanthropy. Our particular focus is on philanthropic funding. So things like funding of health and medical research, we're very strong on saying that ought to ask the question, where do women fit into this? How will this help gender equity? Will this give us some clear focus in the research projects or the health outcomes around women and girls? Dr. Margaret Chan at the World Health Organization actually identifies gender equity as one of the key drivers to improve global health. The reasons for that are very clear, particularly in developing nations where conflict is fueled by, on the metrics of gender equity, areas that have great disparity in gender equity have very high levels of conflict. Global health generally has for many years targeted women. The Gates Foundation recognised that a gender lens has to be at the forefront of what they do because that's where you get change. So one of the key things is actually about women's leadership, and that's a broad aim to increase women in senior leadership positions for the whole gender equity movement. But specifically in health, it's about understanding that until you hear women's voices and until you actually feed that experience into the whole policy framework, you actually will not get the sort of advances in health in the region that you could, and particularly in the Asia Pacific region. There are still some significant health issues that women as heads of the family can really turbocharge improvement in if they are brought into frame. At the end of my session yesterday, I think from a gender equity perspective, particularly in the medical and health profession, there's a lot of women in the health profession, but the senior ranks are still quite male. So for us, it's about getting individually and collectively to just pose that question all the time. Will women benefit from this? How do women fit into this frame? Because so often the default setting is male, and we use the example of cellular, animal and clinical trials being so heavily biased towards men that up to 80% of withdrawals of drugs by the FDA actually cite because of adverse effects in women. So we've got to get that right at the very base level. I think just being around the energy of this group of people, and particularly looking at the age demographic, I'm always optimistic when I see people just going that extra mile and saying we really want to do things differently. So, and the passion and sort of engagement around the gender issue was really quite encouraging. I want to just make a point, I suppose, on a local level, and one of the things that we see as a really key issue, and it's really been brought into focus this year, is domestic violence. And I think the clear message is that we used to blame drug and alcohol abuse, we used to blame a lot of things for why domestic violence was happening, and it's more and more recognised that actually it's about gender equity and power and control and that disparity. So on sort of every level of health and society, I think for men as well as for women, there's so much to be gained if we can actually walk together side by side rather than continue with the inequality. I know it excited a lot of people, and I'm certainly a big fan of Emma Watson's speech. I don't know if you've ever looked at the global map of who signs up. You can actually click onto that and see. I didn't see a lot of action in Australia in a way that I would have liked to have seen, just for people recognising the campaign and signing up. But I think what she's done is actually activated young women in particular to be out and proud about equality and to be less afraid of using the F word. And it kind of staggers me that there is still a reluctance to identify as a feminist, even though what we're talking about is equality, and very few people argue with that. So yeah, I hope that drives, further drives that appetite for change that the Global Ideas Forum is chasing too.